Help me, sis." My niece, Jenny, was about to burst into tears as she handed me something. It was just a picture of my brother, her father, with his colleagues at a bar. "What's wrong, Jenny? Why the sudden distress? What are you two doing over there?" As I was about to ask, my stern-faced sister-in-law interrupted us. "I've been looking for you, Jenny. Come with me," she said, swiftly whisking Jenny away. Left alone, I casually flipped over the picture. To my surprise, on the back was a message from my brother. "If anything happens to me, please protect my daughter. My name is Alice. I'm a 32-year-old working in the office of the construction company my family runs. My brother, 10 years my senior, was always hardworking and bore the weight of expectations as the heir to our family business. Everyone, including me, assumed he would take over the company. However, since he finished high school, disagreements with our father over management policies began to increase. My brother, it seemed, wasn't really interested in taking over the company, often saying, "I love being a carpenter, but that doesn't mean I want to inherit the business." I remember him repeating this like a mantra. Then he announced, "I've met someone I want to marry," and introduced us to a woman. Her name was Maggie. She had an outgoing personality and quickly bonded with our family, but she never lived with us. "I'm going to get married and leave this house." "Wait, aren't you going to take over the business, bro? You know I don't get along with Dad, right? I don't want to cause you any trouble." With those words, he gently stroked my head. True to his word, he married a few days later and left the house. Nevertheless, he always kept in touch with me and we chatted about trivial things. "Maggie's dinner was delicious today. She's a dietitian, so she always prepares meals considering my high blood pressure." Yeah, I've heard that story a million times. You never get tired of bragging, do you?" As long as my brother was happy, that was all that mattered to me. Then, a few years after his marriage, Jenny was born. From then on, we started seeing my brother and his wife occasionally. They seemed blissfully happy, and Jenny was growing up healthily, loved by both parents. Around the time Jenny turned 10, there were talks within the family of mending ties with my brother. We all hoped to recreate the times when the family used to laugh together. However, that wish was not to be fulfilled. One day while I was at work, I received a rare call from my sister-in-law. While it wasn't unusual to get calls from my brother, it was strange to hear from her. Worried, I immediately picked up the phone. "Hello, sister-in-law?" "Oh, Alice." "What's up? It's rare to get a call from you." "Calm down and listen. Your brother, Jake, he fell from scaffolding at work and was taken to the hospital. He slipped because of the rain." The news was so sudden. I felt as if time had stopped. My mind went blank. Immediately, I called my parents, who were also at work, and we hurried to the hospital in the pouring rain. When we were led into the hospital room, we saw my brother, his skin pale. From the moment I saw him, the reality of the phone call hit me, and I collapsed onto the floor. "Bro?" The voice I managed to squeak out was so feeble that I startled myself and a wave of sorrow washed over me. At the bedside, my brother's wife was bawling unabashedly like the heroine of a tragic tale. Her wailing was so intense that it made me hold back my tears and just stare at her, but I felt a strange unease about her behavior. Then Jenny, standing next to her, was looking down, her face pale, not shedding a tear but trembling as if she were terrified of something. "Jenny, are you okay?" It seemed like the shock of her father's death had made her unable to respond to my question. After the wake for my brother at our home, as the relatives were lost in their grief, I found myself quietly shedding tears in a deserted corner of the porch. The photo in the memorial portrait seemed to be a recent one. My brother looked a little worn out, but his expression was peaceful. I wonder if my brother lived a happy life. As I thought about this, an image of Jenny came to my mind. The last time we talked, my brother, who loved his daughter dearly, happily told me about how often he took her to amusement parks and zoos. Jenny must be struggling after losing her father. Thinking about my niece's feelings, I felt tears well up again, but then I heard a familiar voice calling out to me. "Sis." It was Jenny, her eyes brimming with tears. "Jenny, what's wrong?" I wiped my tears and asked her, trying to keep my composure. "Sis, help me. I think I might be next." "Eh?" As I was about to ask her to repeat what she had said, she handed me something while biting her lip. "Dad said if anything happens, I want you to give this to Alice." My brother said that? It was a brown envelope. It seemed a little worn, probably because she had been holding on to it for a while. "It's actually—" Just then, I heard a cold voice behind me saying, "What are you doing?" I was startled and turned around to see my brother's wife, Maggie, with a stern look on her face. "I've been looking for you." "Mama!" Maggie grabbed Jenny's arm and, before I could stop her, quickly whisked her away. Maggie had always been very friendly and kind, but she was behaving very differently now. It's natural given her husband just passed away, but Jenny's behavior was also a bit strange. Left behind, when I looked at what was inside the envelope, it was an ordinary photograph. It looked like it could have been taken at a social gathering. In it, my brother was smiling alongside several of his work colleagues. I decided to flip the photo over. On the back it read, "If anything happens to me, I want you to protect my daughter," in my brother's slightly angular handwriting. I was taken aback, speechless and just staring in surprise. I think Jenny was asking for help. This photo might be related. I decided to call a friend who was a police officer and arranged to meet him the next day. Normally, the funeral would have been conducted the day after the wake, but the crematorium was not available due to a certain day of the week, so we had a day off. This extra day allowed me to uncover the truth behind my brother's death. The next morning, when I arrived at our meeting place, he was already there waiting for me. "Sorry for calling you out of the blue." "Hey, don't worry about it. I was off duty. So what's up?" "Well, it's just that—" I began to tell my friend the sequence of events, and he listened seriously. From a cop's perspective, we can't act on this with just the evidence we have." "I see. I'm sorry I can't be of more help, but remember, I'm always here to lend an ear if you need it." "Yeah, thanks. Just talking about it helps me sort things out." Even after parting ways with my friend, I was still pondering over the photo that Jenny had handed me. No matter how many times I looked at it, the meaning of this photo and my brother's message remained a mystery. What else can I do to find a clue I don't understand from this message alone? I might learn something if I ask Jenny directly, but I feel like my sister-in-law might interfere again. Just then, an idea popped into my head. Maybe I can find something if I look at my brother's belongings. Unable to stay still, I quickly went to my sister-in-law's house. "I'm sorry for bothering you when you're busy. I'm just worried about you and Jenny. Thank you for coming all the way. Jenny is in her room, but let's leave her be for now. She's feeling down since her father passed away." As she said that, she invited me into the living room. She was always tidy and the house was always well kept, but today it felt rather bleak. Oh, there's nothing of my brother's here, and the family photo that was here the last time I visited. There was nothing to suggest that my brother had been here. Desperate to find anything left behind by my brother, I scanned the room. Maggie brought me some tea and homemade pickles. What caught my eye was a light purple bracelet like a rosary on Maggie's wrist. It didn't seem to match her or my brother's taste, and I felt a sense of discomfort as I thanked her for the tea and tasted the pickles. "Wow, it's so salty. These pickles are really salty, aren't they?" I quickly gulped down my tea to wash down the extreme saltiness of the pickles, but Maggie just tilted her head, saying, "Really? I don't think so." Maggie, a dietitian, made delicious meals that my brother looked forward to so much that he would rush home from work. It was clearly strange for something she made. Could it be that she was feeding my hypertensive brother this salty food? Since I arrived at Maggie's house, I've been feeling an indescribable discomfort. I began to worry about Jenny. I'd like to talk to Jenny. She's in her room, right? Just as I stood up and was about to head towards Jenny's room, "No, I won't let you see her." "What? Why?" "I'm sorry, but you should leave. I'm busy preparing for the funeral." Maggie grabbed my wrist, pushed me out into the hallway, and threw me out of the house. Despite visiting the house, I was unable to find any clues. As I looked up at the sky, wondering what to do, Jenny poked her head out of a second-floor window. She put her index finger to her lips in a quiet gesture and threw something at me. It was a small key, wrapped in a cute memo paper. "The key to the shed. Hide it under the potted plant after you use it," the note read. When I silently showed a thumbs up to Jenny, she silently nodded and gently closed the window. I went to the backyard to avoid my sister-in-law and used the key I received to open the shed. Inside, it was packed with my brother's belongings. Among them, I found a diary. Jake was a diligent person and had been recording his daily events in a diary since he lived at home. There was something unbelievable written in there. The seasoning of the food had become heavy, and even when he pointed it out, she said, "Leave it to me, I'm a dietitian." And he couldn't get her to take it seriously. His health had been declining recently. Furthermore, the reason why Jake left that photo was also recorded. I'll never forgive this. The next day, many people, including relatives and Jake's colleagues, gathered at the funeral. When Maggie took the microphone to give the bereavement address, I stood up and stopped her. "I have something I want you all to hear." "Oh, Alice? What's wrong?" Ignoring Maggie, who was surprised by my sudden action, I stepped out in front of the family. Jake's death wasn't an accident. The hall was in an uproar at my words, and Maggie had a very stern look on her face. "What are you talking about? My husband slipped off the scaffold at work and fell." I showed everyone Jake's diary. "Everything is written here. My sister-in-law, who is usually good at cooking, started making heavily seasoned dishes, and Jake's health started to deteriorate. It's strange, isn't it, Maggie, to not only serve salty pickles and soup to Jake, who has high blood pressure, every day, but also to insist that he eat everything without leaving any?" "I don't know anything about that. I was careful with his meals every day." Ignoring Maggie, who seemed to be playing innocent, I pulled out another piece of evidence. "This is a photo that Jake left for me. At first, I didn't know what it meant, but when I visited your house yesterday, I understood. The person in this photo is wearing a bracelet that matches the light purple bead bracelet you are wearing." As I pointed to a certain person, everyone's gaze was instantly drawn there. "Mr. Johnson, you and Maggie were having an affair, weren't you? Even though you were a colleague whom Jake trusted the most, why did you do such a thing?" As the hall began to stir, Maggie glared at me with a stern expression, and the man looked pale and nervous. Mr. Johnson was a familiar face to me as well. He had been a good friend of Jake's since Jake graduated from high school and started working, and he had visited our house many times. His wrist, wiping the sweat from his forehead, revealed the same bracelet as Maggie's. I'm sure Jake was struggling a lot, knowing that the colleague he trusted was his wife's affair partner, and that he might even be targeted for his life. That's why he couldn't tell me directly, and leaving this photo was all he could do. As I spoke to Mr. Johnson, choking back tears, he broke down crying and held his head. "What? A diary and a bracelet can't be evidence of an affair or killing my husband." Maggie started to get defensive. But I was prepared for that, so I continued with the diary. "There's more evidence. Jake checked your phone, Maggie, and saw your emails with him. It seems it was written, 'Jake is in the way for us to be together, let's get rid of him somehow.'" "That's a lie." "Is it a lie? We can easily find out by investigating, right? At first, it seems you thought of taking advantage of my brother's high blood pressure to kill him through his meals, but that would take too long, so driven by your desire to get married as soon as possible, you approached Mr. Johnson to eliminate my brother in a workplace accident, didn't you? You planned to push him from a high place on a rainy day, and if anyone asked, you'd just say he slipped." "I never said that. He's the one who suggested it." Maggie began to point at Mr. Johnson, trying to shift the blame onto him. The man shook his head frantically, denying it. "Mr. Johnson, it was raining on the day my brother died, wasn't it?" Mr. Johnson gave a small nod. "Normally, work would be stopped on a rainy day, so why wasn't it? It was just a drizzle and we had a deadline, so he suggested we should continue with the work, so I thought it was an opportunity. My brother thought of you as his best friend and trusted you until the end, you know? The moment someone gulped, he bowed deeply towards Jenny, Jake's only daughter. I was led astray by her and I did something terrible. I'm truly sorry. As Mr. Johnson continued to apologize while crying, Jenny looked at him with sad eyes. Maggie was still shouting, I don't know anything about it. I'm not guilty. Even at this point, you'll submit the incriminating emails to the police, right? When Mr. Johnson offered his phone, it seemed she finally gave up. Then, a police officer friend who had come to my brother's funeral arrested the two of them and took them away. It was a relief to see them finally apprehended. After that, Maggie and Mr. Johnson received long prison sentences. Thanks to the lawyer I hired, Jenny was able to receive $100,000 from a system called Victims' Compensation Program, which is designed to help the bereaved families of victims recover a peaceful life as soon as possible. Jenny was in shock from the incident and lost her spirits for a while, but I adopted her as my child and she has started to show more smiles. I decided to pour a lot of love into this child, in place of my brother.